Hi, everyone. I'm Cameron Brown, Director of AIPAC, AIEF, Israel. Over the years, as Israelis and Arabs have struggled to make peace, one of the most important things that we've learned is the impact of education on determining how future generations will approach one another. With me today is Marcus Sheff. He's CEO of Impact SE. It's an organization that monitors incitement in school textbooks and curricula. Marcus and his team work towards bringing reconciliation and lasting peace to what has been decades of conflict. Marcus, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Cameron, and for the amazing work that you and the team here in Israel do.
Thank you. Impact SE is an incredibly important organization. Tell us a little bit about what exactly you're doing, and I think, most importantly, your methodology. How exactly do you come to your conclusions?
Impact SE has been looking at textbooks in the region for over 25 years now. And in analysing those textbooks, we use the same methodologies for every single one. Now, those textbooks range from Tunisia all the way across the Maghreb, up to Turkey, down to the Gulf, and across to Iran, but always the same methodology, the same frame. And those are internationally derived standards of peace and tolerance. Respect for the other, for the individual other. Peacemaking is a way to resolve conflict, no hate, gender equality, historical accuracy, and we do not cherry pick. So we look at every single school curriculum the whole way through, from grade 1 to grade 12 and across all subjects. And having done that, not only do we know what is in those textbooks, but we can also measure them against research that we have done previously. So we have a trend line. If there is improvement, which of course is what we are always looking for, or occasionally if textbooks are getting worse. And if I can say, there's always a question, why textbooks? Why are they so important? And clearly, as you stated in your introduction, as Elie Wiesel said when he was asked what you can do about hate, he said, you start with the books. And that is exactly what it is that we are doing. Textbooks are uniquely authoritative, and especially here in the Middle East. You have one textbook, one subject, one grade. They have the seal of the state on them. And students know very clearly that, this comes from the state, from the ruler. And what is inside of them is the national identity that those rulers are passing down. And so, the power of textbooks in the Middle East is absolutely enormous. They, unfortunately, have the power to radicalize. But, they also have the power to act as a real barrier to radicalization. And that is, I think, the interesting takeaway so often from our work. So
you also, as part of your work, you looked at the Palestinian curriculum, and you've done this over again many years, as you've said. What have you found recently?
Well, the Palestinian curriculum, and you're right, we've been looking at it since the late 1990s, was reformed in 2016. And, one imagines that when things are reformed, they get better. Unfortunately, that was not the case with the Palestinian curriculum. Ideas of peace, of peacemaking, was entirely removed from the Palestinian curriculum. It is
after the 1990s.
After the 2016 reform. And so, what one is left with is a very clear vision of one state, Palestine, from the river to the sea, which were created through jihad, through the martyrdom of students, through their sacrifice. There is no idea of peacemaking with the Israeli other. It's full of anti-Semitism. Jews are liars. They are fraudsters. Jews control the world. There is real incitement to violence. Children are told that they must defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They must become martyrs. And if they do, they will receive rewards in paradise. This is a curriculum which uses science as a way of radicalizing young children under the care, not just of the Palestinian Authority, but of UNRWA as well, because UNRWA uses the same text.
Well, so let's talk about that. Again, when you're talking, it sounds like you're talking about the curriculum in Gaza. But I think you're actually talking about the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and the UN run schools there.
Well, that's such an important point, Cameron, because the Palestinian Authority textbooks, which are created in Ramallah, are used in Gaza by Hamas. They are used by UNRWA, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. But you know...
And again, UNRWA is the UN school system.
UNRWA is a UN agency which is sworn to neutrality, sworn to teaching peace and tolerance, and yet they are teaching children every single school day about violence, that they should become part of a violent struggle. They are taught anti-Semitic tropes. There is no peacemaking whatsoever taught to these children. And imagine, you know, you asked about Gaza. Imagine if Hamas are so happy about these textbooks, how bad can they be?
So essentially they're using the same textbooks in Gaza that they do in the West Bank?
Indeed. Palestinian Authority textbooks created, printed in Ramallah, are used in UNRWA schools and in Gaza, controlled by Hamas. And Hamas is delighted with these textbooks, which tells you just something about the extremism of these textbooks.
So if this is what kids are getting in their textbooks, and you talked about this a little bit, but I want to really put a finer point on it. What is the impact? I mean, do we see people actually taking action based on things that they are reading in these textbooks?
Yeah, well, and this is really the terrible takeaway. You know, the impact is clear. When you see Palestinian school children interviewed on television, they absolutely parrot word for word material which we know from the textbooks about jihad, about how they must martyr themselves, quoting Dalal Mughrabi, a terrible terrorist who took part in the killing of 38 people on a bus, including 13 children. You know, she is specifically in these textbooks a role model for young girls. Young girls are told that if they want equality with boys, the way to get equality is to martyr themselves just like she did. And so it is a strategically created curriculum created by the Palestinian Authority's Ministry of Education to radicalize 1.3 million school children every single day.
In Congress, they are now considering a piece of legislation called the Peace and Tolerance in Palestinian Education Act. How do you think that this could positively encourage the Palestinian Authority to reform itself, its textbooks, its curriculum?
Well, I think HR 2374 is remarkably important. It is, as you know, passing through the House Foreign Affairs Committee at the moment. It's going to be considered in the Senate as well. And, you know, it states very clearly what the United States should expect from Palestinian Authority and UNRWA textbooks. And again, they're the same thing. UNRWA teaches Palestinian Authority textbooks unchanged, unedited, as they are. And particularly important, as the United States is now funding more than 1/3 of UNRWA's overall budget, there absolutely has to be a statement by the United States saying we will not put up with these children being radicalized every single school day on our dime. It's not what Americans want or expect. It is not what we signed up for.
Absolutely. Let's move our focus a little eastward, the UAE.
Right.
And I think given some of your recent reports on the UAE, we've seen major positive changes in their trend line. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. And I have to say that, you know, this is the joyful part of our work. In reviewing the UAE curriculum, and it is a big piece of work, you know, well over 220 books we looked at. And what we saw there was, I think, quite remarkable. Clearly, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, he has stated before that he saw education as the key to the success and prosperity of his country. And we've looked at the result, and the result is absolutely remarkable. A set of textbooks which connect peace and tolerance with prosperity, which respect the other, which encourage young people to be curious about others, about non-Muslims, about the West, about other cultures. It is absolutely a model for the region. And it was quite frankly a very pleasurable moment to be able to conclude everything that we've seen about this curriculum and conclude that it is a blueprint for what can be done in Muslim and Arab countries.
Well, you say tolerance towards the other. There is a long and really terrible history of anti-Semitism in textbooks throughout the region. You're saying also in terms of anti-Semitism, there's a major shift here?
Absolutely. And so this is what we are so focused on now. We are focused on 300 million school children every single day learning to hate Jews, learning to hate Israel. And this is done through Islamic studies, through literature, through language, through history, through so many subjects. There is not any anti-Semitism in the UAE curriculum. Not only that, but we can compare it with past textbooks and we can see that elements were taken out which were anti-Semitic. We can absolutely see exercises that were removed. And we can see how ideas of tolerance and respect for the other are in a very large Islamic studies part of the curriculum. Time after time, surahs and hadiths, that is the elements of Islam, are used in order to teach young people that they should be tolerant. There is no hate there at all. It is, it's remarkable.
You've mentioned something that this is really a top-down change that really drove the change in curriculum. When you look across the region, do you see changes like that in other countries, or how do you see other countries developing their curricula?
So I think we do see a trend, and it is, obviously so important for us to be part of that trend and to be able to encourage that trend. King Abdullah II reformed Islamic textbooks in Jordan, and that was important, and we absolutely remark on that. And we want to see more change in Jordanian textbooks, but this was an important moment, and he did it with the Muslim Brotherhood demonstrating outside his palace on a Friday afternoon, because across the region the Muslim Brotherhood control education. The idea of give me a child at 6 and he or she is mine for life. Well, that extends to the Muslim world as well, and the Muslim Brotherhood are absolutely on that. And so having this educational infrastructure taken away from them is something which is against everything which they stand for. And yet King Abdullah did it. Of course, Mohammed bin Ziyad, very clearly did that as well. We see improvements.
In other words, just to put a finer point on this.
Sure.
He not only changed the textbooks in the UAE, he changed the teachers and the entire instruction.
Absolutely. A curriculum written by the Muslim Brotherhood, taught by the Muslim Brotherhood, was never going to work. So he not just changed the curriculum, but he made sure that those teachers who were radicalizing young people were no longer teaching. I think we are seeing elements of that in the region. Jordan, as I said, Morocco. We are in the process of a large piece of research on the Moroccan curriculum at the moment, but we are absolutely seeing things which we like and which we will remark upon. These things, though, are slow in some countries. And of course, not all is rosy in the garden. You are always going to have the Irans that teaches the most abject, terrible curriculum, encouraging children to be martyrs, to take example from the Iran-Iraq war. The Syrian curriculum, which is the last refuge of Baathism. Unfortunately, the Turkish curriculum has gone backwards in time. From a curriculum which was staunchly secular, jihad has now crept in, neo-Ottoman ideas, changes there really need to be made. It needs to be pushed back. But the positivity that we are seeing is something which so needs to be encouraged, and it needs to be encouraged by the international community. They need to be aware of that. We are making them aware of that. And other countries who are not there yet need to be there.
How does the United States benefit from the work that Impact SE does?
Well, I think the obvious answer is how the United States has suffered from extremism which has been taught in this region. You know, if you look at 9/11, 15 of those 19 terrorists were educated in Saudi schools and were educated with an extraordinarily bad curriculum. Bin Laden himself was educated in Saudi schools. It's not the only occasion where Islamic extremists have gone to the United States, having been educated in the Middle East through extremist curricula, and have committed acts of terror. But it's more than just specific acts of terror. It is hundreds of millions of children being taught anti-Western ideas, anti-American ideas, to hate the infidel, and the infidel are Jews and Christians. These ideas reach the shores of America, and they absolutely make a difference to America's security. It is in America's strategic interests that children in this region are taught peace and tolerance. And if I could just say on Saudi Arabia, that was a terrible curriculum. There have been dramatic improvements in the Saudi curriculum.
How so?
We did a report in 2003, in 2008, where we saw the curriculum for what it was, which was really extremist. In 2019,
in terms of its tolerance or lack thereof,
in terms of its absolute lack of tolerance, in terms of buying into a jihadi vision, a vision of martyrdom, a hatred of all things Western, everything one could imagine about a curriculum which, as I said, inspired terrorists to fly planes on 9/11 into the Twin Towers. But in 2019, we did a report which I think was finally a breakthrough, where, again, we pointed out how problematic the curriculum was. It was taken to Saudi Arabia, to the Royal Palace. The Saudis said, "We got it, we understand, we will make changes." We did a review in 2020, and they did. They
Wow.
made significant changes. And this just wasn't a moment in time. We looked again in 2021, they had made even more changes.
Wow.
And so, really significant improvements. So if you look at MBZ in UAE, of course, MBS in Saudi Arabia has his own Vision 2030.
the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He wants Saudi Arabia to be trading with the West, and he absolutely understands that that economy needs to be based on young people who, don't hate the people with whom they are doing business, clearly. They need to have respect for them. They need to be tolerant of different customs and different ideas. And so, very much what we see in the UAE, there is a big element of that in Saudi Arabia. And we were so grateful to be able to be a part of that change. And that, to us, is absolutely the future, to be able to work with partners in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, to make the changes. The vector of anti-Semitism in this region, I think 300 million children learning to hate Jews has got to be the biggest vector of anti-Semitism. And so rooting that out, making a difference to that, I think that's really a mission which over the next few years we have to and we will be dedicated to.
Excellent. Marcus, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Cameron. It's such a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to speak to APAC. What a remarkable organization.